All right, I'm back with our space game, and right now we can move and shoot, but we've got no enemies to shoot at. So in this video, we'll put some enemies in the game, and we're just going to put three stationary enemies across the top of the screen, and then go ahead and make sure that when we hit them with a laser, they disappear from the game. Things like getting them to move and shoot back at us, we'll save those for other lessons. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. All right, so let me get out of the way. So the first thing I want to do is load an image for the enemy. So I'm just going to copy one of my image loading lines, change it to enemy image. And I've got two different enemy ships right now. Since this is the first one we're putting in the game, I'm going to make this like the easy enemy, and I'll make another one with more complex behavior later. And this guy doesn't look quite so tough. The black enemy looks a little bit like a tougher looking ship here. So I'm just going to load the red one for now. All right, it's going to be a real basic enemy, one hit with a laser and it's dead. Let's think about the class now, right? It is, an enemy, just like everything else, is going to have an XY location and an image. So I'm just going to go ahead and take my ship and copy that. I am going to leave out the speed right now because I'm going to use a slightly different technique to get the enemies to move, and that's a video in itself. So I'm just going to take down the I'm going to take the class declaration and the initializer down through its like image and location. And I'll just paste it after the laser. And so just change this to enemy, and everything else is good as it is. All right, so now let's make some enemies to put in the game. I'm just going to do 3 of them. So say I'll do enemy 1 equals, and it's enemy. We've got to do an X, so I'm going to do 150, 100, and the image is going to be enemy image. We'll just copy this a couple times, like enemy 2 and enemy 3. And we'll put the next one at 300, and I'll put the next one at 450. So they're all 100 pixels from the top, and then I just spaced them out 150 pixels a piece here. I don't even really know where this is going to end up on the screen, but I'm sure it's going to be fine for just getting things to work. The next thing we need to do is make a sprite group. So I'm going to do enemies. And I always make my groups, I give them a nice, like a plural sounding name, with the exception of the player, but plural sounding name so I can tell it's a list. And it's pygame.sprite.group. And then we can add our enemies in there, so we can say enemies.add, and we can just do them all at once here. So we can go E1, E2, E3. All right, so at this point we run it and nothing's changed, but all that means is we have to draw them. So I've got my enemies group, and I will go down to the drawing code. And we'll draw them. And there we go. All right, if I shoot them, nothing happens yet. So let's work on that, right? So it's just like you do any other sprite group, you just do the name of the group, .draw, and this will cycle through every enemy and blit its image on the screen. So now, detecting the lasers. All right, so this is where we're going to use an update function again. And so let's make a new function called update. And what the enemy is going to do, so each individual enemy is going to be responsible for checking all of the lasers in the game and seeing if any collide with it. So this is very much the built-in Pygame stuff that I absolutely wouldn't memorize. This is this is copy paste. Google it and then copy paste kind of code. So it's hits. I'll explain the line after I type it. It's pygame.sprite collide. Pygame, excuse me, it's .sprite collide. And then I'm going to say self and lasers and true. So what this line of code does, right here, this part looks at a particular sprite, in this case, an enemy. That's why it's self, because the enemy is checking itself, and a group. So an individual sprite and a group, and it's seeing if anything from this group happens to be colliding, touching itself. And it returns a list of all of so this in this case, it'll return a list of all of the lasers objects in the game that might be touching an enemy, and it stores that list in hits. And so it's real simple to check to see if we've been hit. All I have to do is say if the length of hits is greater than 0, so if there's anything in this list, a laser must have hit us, and therefore we have to kill ourselves. In the kill function, this is another built-in Pygame function. What this does is it just removes the sprite from any groups that might contain it. So if a sprite gets hit by a laser, right, it's part of the enemy sprite group. And, let's say E2, enemy 2 gets hit by one of the lasers, it will remove itself from the enemies list, enemies group, and the next time it won't get drawn. Okay. So, and one more thing we have to do, right? We have to do enemies.update. And let's see if this works. Start keeping them out of the game, and it seems to be working pretty well. All right, I'm going to run this again and just show you a couple little kind of, quirky things. So one, I can miss him. When I shoot here, watch this area when it finally disappears. And you can see how the laser never really made contact with the ship. And here I'll shoot it right in the middle. And you can see it disappears before it actually hits the ship. So what's happening? You got a little test code so you can see something here. This is the rectangle that bounds each enemy, and so when the hit is detected when the laser touches the rectangle that contains the ship, not when it touches like actual pixels of the ship. This can be fixed, and we can do pixel perfect collision detection, but for reasons I'll talk about later, I'll save that for another video. All right. One more thing, just when you look in the code, is this true value, what's that about? And so I'm going to flip it to false. And I'll shoot. And you can see now the laser continues through the object after it makes contact. So I'm going to leave this as true, and what the true means is, when a collision, when a laser is part of a collision, the laser should eliminate itself, right? The laser should call its own kill function as well. All right, so let me clean that up, and that is it for getting enemies into the game, and I'll see you in another video.